Hey, how's everybody doing? Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to say a couple things. One is go find a content creator named Guilty Words. You may already know about her. If you don't, look for her video. I don't think it's her most recent one. I think it might be 2 ago. But in that, she explains why Castigar is probably not going to be an issue with Wendy. She talks about what Georgia Adelson, oh, what an insult, Georgia Kappelman did to be really careful about that. After I watched that video, I felt a lot better, so watch it too. The other thing I want to point out is a content creator called Prison Shade. Look for their video that's called Inside Lori Daybell's Life in Prison or something like that. It's very informative, and it really applies also to Donna and, in the future, Wendy, right? Okay, Moms for Justice, if you haven't seen her, she's killing it with Adelson content. Spill the Crime Tea, of course, Leslie B. and Judy. Dawn is back. She has a channel called Lounge Bar Crime. She has this really charming British accent. She's really pretty too. Like I don't know. It's not a reason to like someone, but she was very ill for a while. She was in the hospital. Took her a while to bounce back, but she is back now, and so check her out. True Crime Wifey. I just saw her last night in Leslie B's live. She was there with Griff, and I don't know why I've been missing her content, but I know her, I know who she is, and I really like her, so I'm going to go start checking that out more. Let's see, if I missed anybody, Patty's Playhouse, Jackie, I'm just trying to point out the people that are still producing Adelson content, and I really appreciate it because we want to keep the pressure up on the prosecution and on public opinion in general. This is still out there, it's still being discussed. And Wendy, if you think it's going to die down and let you just slither off into the sunset, forget it. Okay, let's see. My last video, the legal chess game, I just want you guys to keep in mind I'm not a lawyer. I really commented on everything as accurately as I could with what I looked up, and I usually try to find at least 2 sources, but I think what I maybe did was sometimes I might connect the dots in the wrong way. So if you're interested in that topic, go back and look for 4 or 5 posts by someone named MFG. I don't know who that is, him or her, but they're really knowledgeable, and they explained a whole lot of stuff, and some of it was over my head, but all in all, I think the point is really just knowing how evil Wendy is and using the law to protect herself. And mind you, it's just not her knowledge of the law. She's represented by John Laurel. He's a big shot. He's probably feeding her some of these ideas too. Okay, let's see. I guess before I get into flawed logic being used in this case, I want to just make a couple disclaimers. One would be nobody knows what evidence Georgia has, including me. All anybody is doing is guessing. Why there is this animosity between people who all want to see justice for Dan, I don't really get that, but oh well, that's the way it is. The other thing too, I want to caution you guys is you have to try really hard to be objective, and actually I think it's almost impossible because we're human beings with biases, but you got to remember, don't mistake thinking Wendy is going to get arrested with wanting her to get arrested. There's a difference. So you got to keep that in mind and just try to be objective as you can, because let's face it, Wendy is just a horrible, hateful person. It's really easy to just want her ass in jail badly. Okay, now, let's see, where am I at? Well, I guess I'll just mention this. It's not, on the whole thing about legal chess games, I did find this. It's called Winder, or maybe Winder versus Moore. It's in the Florida Constitution. It's a 2006 case from I guess maybe the Florida Supreme Court, and in that they're saying that the Florida Constitution's right to privacy is stronger than the U.S. Constitution. What? I don't get that, but, I think maybe I better stop commenting on legal issues and leave that to Judy and Carl and the lawyers on SDS. And, okay. I thought with the, let's see, I know what fallacy I want to begin with, but first, what is a fallacy? A fallacy is a mistake in reasoning. It may sound convincing on the surface, but if you start looking at what's underneath, it doesn't mesh. Okay, there's two kinds of fallacies. There's a formal fallacy and an informal fallacy. Formal fallacies is when there's something wrong with the structure. And the example I read said, all human beings breathe air, all dogs breathe air, therefore all dogs are human beings. So the one that I really like, I remember from years ago, is that if you eat pickles, it will kill you. And I have proof. When they did a study of all the people who were born in the year 1900, out of all of them, if they ate a pickle, 100% of them are dead. I mean, it's 2026, so of course they're dead. But anyway, that's the pickle one. Okay, but what we're going to focus on today is informal fallacies. These are the ones that you'll see more in court cases. And this is where they're using incorrect language or they're trying to distract you with nonsense. So we'll get into that, but I also want to say, do you really need to know the names of these fallacies to be able to spot a weak defense or weak logic when you see it? No, not really. But if you do know them, it makes it easier, I think, to spot them. And it also helps you in your own reasoning to make sure you avoid them and you don't use these examples of flawed logic. Okay, so I think the first one we'll start with is a simple one. It's called ad hominem. Ad hominem is when a person probably has a weak case. And so what they do is they will attack the person instead of the issue. Now, sometimes it could be a strategy. Like, Fulford was really attacking Katie McBanois for having lied on the stand, and now she's telling the truth. And I can kind of see that because she had nothing to work with, and the defense attorneys, they're obligated to represent their client as best as possible. So you can't really blame her. But the fact is, even a liar is capable of telling the truth later. So you can't just say, once you lied, you always lie. Okay, now, did you guys realize ad hominem also applies to trolls and haters? Because, and this is true, when they come in, at least in my channel, and they disagree with my point of view, they might state their point of view, but they'll follow it up with insults and slams and name calling, and they're attacking me instead of the point I'm standing for. So, I picture these tough guys coming in here like, I'm going to set that girl straight. I'm going to, when in fact, I don't like to laugh at people, but it's amusing to me because in fact, they're just showing how weak their case is. They're weak. Because if you can back up your stand with logical thought or evidence, why on earth would you stoop to name calling? Okay, but in the name of being transparent, I just wanted to admit to you guys, I did use ad hominem once. I called somebody a name, and what happened was I was in the hospital. A nurse came in the room and gave me an injection, and it really hurt. So I called her a poopy. And then my mother came right over to me and said, if you call her that again, I'm going to spank you where you got your shot. I was not quite 3 years old. And that's my other point. I think using ad hominem, even though it's flawed logic, it's also simply juvenile. It's just so childish. Okay. And that's why I left up, you'll see there's a troll I haven't banned yet, User. This is a guy who likes sports in New York. I don't know who he is. His name is, User, but Thank you, user, for that really nice flow into my topic of flawed logic, because you're such a good example of ad hominem. Okay, let's see, where are we at? Okay, we did ad hominem. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is where this all began, this idea to make this video. One day I was walking through my living room and I just had an epiphany. And I don't even know why. It's not like I go around. I mean, I do like the subject of logic. I took a class decades ago in college as an elective, and I loved it. But it's not like I go around thinking about it or analyzing things. So I don't even know why. It just hit me. So let's see. What I want to say is, this piece of flawed logic is called a false binary or a false dichotomy. I've also seen it called a false dilemma. The name I like for it makes it simple, because what it is right in the name, and that is the either or fallacy. The naysayers out there that are like arguing that we think Wendy still has a really great chance of getting arrested, and they're saying no, she doesn't. That's what they're using. They're using the either or fallacy. So let me tell you what that is. Well, first I think I'm going to give you the example that my teacher gave me in college, because I still remember it. She said there was a local body shop and they had a lot of commercials on TV. And at the end of the commercial, they always said their slogan, and it was kind of cutesy because it rhymed a little bit, not quite. But at the end, they would say, "It's us or rust." Well, is it really? Couldn't you also trade your car in on a new car? Couldn't you also go to a different body shop and get your rust problem treated? Maybe you have a nephew in Votech who's learning that and will do it for you cheap. The point is, there are not two choices, and usually they're at polar opposites. And this is what the person's trying to mislead you towards their point of view by thinking you have these two choices, when in fact, there's a lot of middle ground and there are plenty of alternative perspectives. So let's see, what are they saying? Okay, hold on, I gotta find this so I say it right. Okay, this is what the naysayers are saying. Either the prosecution has enough evidence on Wendy, in which case she'd already be arrested, or the prosecution does not have enough evidence. That's either or. That is incorrect. There are many other factors in between. And I wrote a list here of a few. Jack Campbell and Georgia both said that they need to take a break. They've been living, eating, sleeping Adelsons, and it is a dark case. It'll take you to a dark place. It did to me. I was only there 3 days. I can't even imagine these prosecutors. And I remember Georgia at a press conference saying, well, first she said she felt honored to be a part of getting justice for the Markells, but later she said she feels really bad about the Markell boys because there is no true justice for them. And in a way, because of her involvement in the trials, she feels a little bit, not dirty, but she feels like a part of it. So, I think they needed a break for mental sanity is one thing. Okay. Now, are Georgia and Sarah just living, waiting to prosecute the Adelsons? No, they have plenty of other cases. And in fact, they had to move up Donna's because she tried to flee. They weren't ready for her yet. So they already have a backlog of other cases. To me, it makes perfect sense that they have to be tying up loose ends and working on other cases. Okay, reason number 3. They're trying to say there's a lack of evidence. I think it's a matter of the prosecution being really careful, because Wendy's going to be tricky. If you look at a list of all the evidence that was used to convict Charlie and Donna, a lot of it does not apply to Wendy. So she is going to be tricky. On that subject of evidence, how do we know what Georgia has? We don't. But I keep getting this feeling like the last trial, she really pressed Wendy on how well she knows Catherine McBanoa. Do you only know her through your brother? Do you have an independent relationship with her? Have you ever talked to her on the phone? Have you ever talked to Charlie on the phone and he put her on the phone? She drilled that in. Personally, I think she might be setting her up because she might have evidence about that. And maybe not too. I know I'm guessing, but at least I feel like I'm based this on some sound thoughts and not, well, you're wrong because you're stupid and a silly old man and you're full of fantasy. Or like, I'm not using ad hominem with them. Okay. All right. Now, I just learned this one recently. I read the idea that they are waiting for Charlie's appeal to see if his conviction is upheld. Then the state has a clean, I'm doing quotes, a clean path to use the evidence from his trial. Okay, what else? They have new evidence. They have evidence that Harvey and Donna were wiretapped and they discussed a plan to harm Robert, their own son. Horrible people. Now, the specific way they were either going to kill or harm him was redacted, so we don't know what that is yet. But there's more and more evidence. We see it every trial. So for people to just write this off and say, well, obviously she doesn't have enough evidence, that just is not true. Okay, let's see. I also wanted to tell you about a precedent case, okay? It's been 11 years and they haven't arrested Wendy yet. Well, guess what? In the case of Robert Durst killing a woman named Susan Berman, the death was in 2000. The arrest was in 2015. It took them 15 years to get to where they felt it was the right timing. And I think maybe they got another clinch pin of evidence. And then he was convicted in 21. So, of course, we'd like to see her go in jail sooner rather than later. But do we really want Georgia to rush this and then possibly lose the case? And now you got double jeopardy. You can't try a person twice for a murder. So I feel just as strongly as I ever have that she will be arrested. We just have to be patient because we want it done right. So, let's see. Okay. Precedent case. Okay. Okay, so that's an either or fallacy. You know, that's like telling somebody sink or swim, live or die. You're giving these polar extremes when there's so many things in between. That's what the naysayers are doing. Don't buy it. Okay, next, I thought I would talk to you about a straw man. Straw man's interesting, an interesting fallacy. And I have a clip to show you if it's still here. Okay, the straw man fallacy. This is what happens when one side, say the prosecution, has such a strong case, you could represent it with a statue made out of concrete, right? So the weak side, in this case the defense, they're going to misrepresent what Georgia is claiming and twist it all up until it's just a straw man, a little weak argument that they can knock down. And let's see, I got, well, let me see if I can get this video now. I want to show you, Donna's defense was one straw man after another, but this is the one that stood out the most to me. So I gotta see if I can line this up now. Okay, guys, ready?
Annie, it's not even hatred on his parents.
We're
sitting here with murder charges because she did something like that, called somebody a royal couple. She said other bad things. She called Danny a major fucker. Jibbers, which Wendy Adelson testified that she came up with that nickname for him. A religious zealot, and Wendy testified that the issues in their marriage included matters of he had now become more strict in their religion than she wanted to follow. That was one of their problems. She called him a royal jackass, a piece of shit, a fucker, crazy, a bastard, and she called him Elvis. That's why we are sitting here today.
No, it's not.
That is hatred for somebody. That proves they wanted to have him killed. Are you serious?
Are you serious? I mean, come on. That like disregards all the evidence because they called him bad names. Obviously, they hate him and they murdered him. Like, oh, and by the way, they never even did address the evidence of Donna in her own handwriting writing a lying script for Drina to give on the stand. And you know what? I was thinking, Patricia Bird, I didn't find her testimony terribly impressive or not like Drina's, but I wonder, their strength in numbers. I wonder if they included that and Drina's, making it maybe a little bit harder to attack them. I don't know, but let's see, another straw man she used. Oh gosh, it was just on the tip of my tongue. Let's see, Jackie Fulford. It'll come to me later. But that's what a straw man is. It's just an absurd exaggeration. Okay. Ad hominem, either or. Let's see. Let me talk next about this one. Now, do you guys remember? I got to watch the time too, so I'm probably going to have a part 2. Do you guys remember when Georgia was crossing Charlie Adelson? And I think she caught him off guard when she brought up all these names that were making him giggle in court. Like, oh, I mean, come on, is that Beavis or Butthead? Oh, she said fuck in a courtroom. Woo! Oh my God, I thought that made him look so bad. But anyway, she's bringing this up, and then she says to him, is this how your mom normally speaks? And I think he got pissed. I think he wanted to defend mommy, don't make my mommy look bad. And so he said, well, that is kind of harsh, but you just said worse, or you just lied in court. And Georgia went on and then stopped and went, oh, yeah, right. Like Donna was calling Dan these names legitimately. Georgia is merely quoting her. So, that's supposed to be the same thing. But do you guys remember what else Charlie said? What else did he say? He said, I've been called worse. That is the fallacy of relative privation. Maybe privation. I'm not sure how to say that. It's also called the appeal to worse problems or the not as bad as fallacy. So what someone tries to dismiss a valid argument by pointing out that a much worse problem exists somewhere else, like Charlie's been called worse. This is used as a red herring to distract from the issue at hand. It's going to rely on incorrect assumptions. Let's see, limited empathy is a part of this. That's assuming that human beings can only care about one thing at a time. Let's see, false equivalence. That's implying that for a problem to be valid, it must be the worst possible version of that problem. Okay, now, guess who else used the same flawed logic in that trial? Can you think of anybody? Miss Fancy Pants herself. $80,000 is not a lot of money. Linda Bailey. Because when Georgia was hammering her about that she didn't call the Adelson divorce contentious, and Bailey was backed into a corner, and she finally said, well, I've seen worse. That's the same thing. She was that's flawed logic. That doesn't do anything, because of a divorce case in North Florida where they killed 80 people, they burnt the house down, whatever. It was way more. That doesn't have anything to do with the contention in Dan and Wendy's divorce. That doesn't apply at all. Okay, let's see. False equivalence. Okay, we talked about that. So anyway, when you have this line of thinking, this flawed line of thinking, the logical conclusion is there's always something worse, always another thing worse, always another thing worse. you get to a point where the logical conclusion is that there's only one person on earth with the worst life in existence. They're the only person who has a right to complain. That just shows the absurdity of it. Now you got to keep in mind sometimes comparison is not a fallacy. And a really good example is when there's a huge tragedy, traffic pileup, and you get called in to assess the people that need help. And then you're putting black toe tags on the ones who are dead. You're putting red tags on the ones who are most likely not going to survive. Yellow on people who are critical but have a shot. And green on the ones you call walkie-talkies. And they're the ones that'll get pushed aside, go over there and get some water. And, they're not going to be dealt with till last. Now, I guess I don't need to explain about that anymore. Okay. So yeah, sometimes comparisons is not a fallacy, like in the case of triaging. When you have limited resources, then you're going to save the most people you can and not necessarily the most critical. Okay, now let's see, where else? Let's talk about Wendy. Wendy, a couple of fallacies about her. She used something called circular contradiction. Okay, listen to this. She's running late. She's in a rush to buy bourbon and get to this lunch. Doesn't have time to shower, but she takes 18 minutes to give Charlie relationship advice with a Geek Squad guy standing there waiting. First of all, do you think Charlie wants relationship advice from Wendy or anyone? This guy's bases his dating on love him and leave him. If you get angry at him, painfully penetrate them anally and make them suffer. You gonna give a relationship advice to a guy like that? Ugh, he's so gross. Okay, now, Wendy is also using the fallacy of compartmentalization. I can't really explain this one exactly, but this is what it is, how it applies here. Wendy wants the jury to believe that she's a protective, loving mother. But she's also a person who sees police tape at her kid's father's home and thinks, well, I better get to the liquor store so I'm not late for lunch. It just doesn't jive. Okay, now this is a lawyer trick. It's called a non-denial denial. And this is like a tit for tat, like between Georgia and her. And Georgia's trying to make the point that Wendy did a drive-by. And now Wendy, and they're saying Wendy was probably coached by Laura on this, and is using like terminology. So then Wendy says, let's see, I didn't drive by, I drove to the tape, saw it was blocked off, and turned around. Now, okay, this is something that's not about flawed logic, but it's something I just learned about from somebody's comment on another channel, which is also how I learned the term schadenfreude. I'd never heard of that till this case, but here's my new one. It's called duper's delight. Okay, what this is when you see just a flash of pride go across someone's face because they think they're so clever, or maybe they're actually reliving the pleasure of that insult. Like, for example, calling Dan the Dark Lord. This is where people are saying, and I haven't gone back to look again yet, but they're saying when Georgia asked her about calling him the Dark Lord, she had a suppressed smile. So what it says here is a truly grieving widow isn't proud of how well she testifies. She doesn't have authentic grief. She has strategic mimicry. The Dark Lord. So duper's delight. And yeah, and you can see that, but I think you can see it a lot more in past trials, because this trial, she looked scared and she had cleaned up her act somewhat. But these behavioral experts, I got to log off. I'm going to go to part 2. Okay, guys.